Thanks for joining us, Congressman. Michael Guest from the 3rd District. Hadn't talked to you in a few weeks, but we appreciate you coming on. I'd like to start today, if I could. I noticed that the Biden administration has put forward some new possible rules that when you build a house, you're going to have to spend another basically 10 grand to insulate it to higher standards. And I can't help but think about the gas cans that they screwed up. You can't buy a good gas can now. The gas stoves that they want to do away with, dishwashers that don't wash dishes, air conditioners that don't really cool. What is it going to take before Congress steps in and says, the EPA, and I asked Congressman Ezell this yesterday, and just wonder how you feel about the EPA and what you would do if given the opportunity to sort of reel in the unbelievable power that the EPA has over our day-to-day life.
Well, and it's not just the EPA. I mean, over the last several decades, Congress has delegated much of their authority to these administrative agencies. And the EPA is one that probably is the most egregious, creates the most egregious overreach with much of what they're doing. But we, as a Congress, we need to pull back that authority because that authority was given to the legislative branch by our founding fathers. And what we have seen over the years, and this goes back decades, is something that is recent, is Congress creates these agencies, which are under the control of the administration. We give much of our rulemaking authority to these agencies. And then we see, particularly with President Biden, we see these agencies abuse that rulemaking authority, and they pass very draconian rules that are then enforced on the American people. And the only way to stop that is one, individuals can go to courts and they can sue these government agencies, and they can get injunctions and stop that, and that happens on a regular basis. But what we need to do is we need to, one, take back that rulemaking authority. And then we need to use the power of the purse. I will say that last legislative cycle, last budget cycle, we cut EPA's budget. And this year, the budget that we're proposing out of the House is going to cut EPA's budget once again. It is a rogue, out-of-control agency, them and the IRS both. And we need to do what we can using those levers of funding and then trying to take back their rulemaking authority. Because it is something that everyday Americans are extremely frustrated about. So much of what happens now is done administratively, and Congress is no longer part of that. But part of that problem too, Michael, is we created that when Congress gave them that authority.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I have discussed this with both you and Congressman Ezell in the past. But it seems like that Congress is just, and I don't mean to come across wrong because I know it's not you or Congressman Ezell. I mean, he's only been there, this is his first term, but have they just gotten lazy in Washington? Do they not want to do the work that's required?
Yeah, I don't know if it's laziness, and I think over time, these agencies continue to take a greater and greater role, and really an outsized role in what they were created to do. And it's been very difficult, at least in the last 3 years, because the Democrats that control the Senate, that control the White House, they're not going to agree to give back any of that administrative power because they want to use that to enforce things such as requiring people insulate their house, doing away with gas stoves, some of the tailpipes emissions that EPA is looking at, which really will do away with the internal combustion engine. I think the long-term goal of agencies like EPA is to go to some sort of system where everything is solar, where everything is wind, where energy costs substantially more, and they do that by trying to say that we're going to save the environment, but we're not doing anything that deals with the pollutants that's being put in the air in China and these other developing countries. The amount of CO2 emissions here in the United States continues to go down without these draconian measures that are in place. And so we do need to do something. I hope that when Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House, that not only will we get our spending under control and not only will we be able to close the border, but that we're going to be doing something with these agencies, because if we don't do something when we're in control, you're going to just see these agencies continue to ruin the lives of everyday Americans.
Gotcha. Okay, so moving on to another subject, we saw last week, I guess, that President Biden is ordering oil to be taken out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And that word alone, strategic, ought to say something about what the mission of that petroleum reserve is. However, we know that what he's doing it for is to try to artificially lower gas prices to get a little relief for folks this summer, but also to sort of ease that pain that he's been having, that people look at him and go, why do we have such high gas prices? What do you think about that? And is there anything Congress can do to stop these kind of things from happening?
Well, clearly what he's doing has a political motivation. This is an election year. He was concerned about energy costs, about gas prices, that the price at the pump is going to impact people supporting him in his bid for president. We, as Republicans, have passed legislation out of the House that previously would have required the president to refill the strategic reserve. This is not the first time that he's tapped into our strategic reserve with the intent, again, not because there's a national emergency, there's not some huge disaster such as a hurricane where that fuel is needed. He tapped into it really only because he wants to use that reserve to lower gas prices. And so we have introduced legislation, passed legislation in the House that would have required him to replace that. That legislation has died in the Senate. We're seeing that the very purpose for which that reserve is created is being violated. And it just goes to show that we have a lawless president, a president that will do or say anything to get elected, a president on one hand that says, hey, I'm going to prevent you, being the Americans, from drilling for oil in America, but I'm going to use our strategic reserve, a stockpile that we created for a time of war, to lower gas prices so that I can get reelected. And again, it just goes to show the hypocrisy of this administration, and it just reinforces our need to have a change in president and to see Donald Trump be reelected in November.
Moving on to another subject, we're talking to Congressman Michael Guest from the 3rd District of Mississippi. The Border Patrol turns 100 years old. Well, they actually turn 100 years old this week, I think, and you did a floor speech last week on that. Tell us a little bit about the Border Patrol and the importance of them and what's going on with the Border Patrol.
Yeah, the Border Patrol had their origins 100 years ago. They were out of El Paso, began as a small mounted unit, which really were there just to maintain law and order on the southern border and to stop individuals from smuggling items into the United States. We've seen over the last 100 years the size and the scope of that agency grow. But I would say that in light of what we're seeing along the southwest border, that the Border Patrol is one of the most important law enforcement agencies that we have. They're an agency that's been handcuffed by this administration. They are an agency that has not been allowed to carry out their mission, which is to defend the border and to protect our citizens. But I'll tell you that I've been to the border, as has Congressman Ezell, on multiple occasions. There are some extremely hardworking men and women on the Border Patrol who want to be able to do their job. When we're down there and we're meeting with them and we're talking with these agents, they basically have told us, hey, if you will allow us to do our job, if you will remove these restraints placed on us by this administration, we can secure the border, and we can do that in short order. And so as we think about our frustration with the border, the number of immigrants that we see coming across, it's not the rank and file Border Patrol who are not doing their job. It's Secretary Mayorkas and it's Joe Biden and it's the president and his administration and the policies that he's put in place that has created that. And so we wanted to do something to thank the Border Patrol, thank those agents for their hard work, and we wanted to celebrate that 100-year anniversary. So we did that floor speech to recognize and to thank the men and women who work so hard every day to try to keep our nation safe.
Thank you for doing that. I appreciate those guys, too. And Congressman Ezell told me that he personally met with some of those folks, as you have. And he said, Michael, they're just like us, man. They're just hard-working cops. So thanks for doing that. All right, let's move on. I got one more subject that I really wanted to get in. You know, we see this Trump trial, this miscarriage of justice that's going on in New York, and really it's a political prosecution is what it is. And because of the national importance of this, you know, you got a Republican nominee for president that's being held in a courtroom. He can't get out in politics. And they're using a federal law to bump up a misdemeanor to a felony. And so my question to you is, what can you do in Congress? And do you think Congress should investigate this and investigate Bragg and some of these others for what they're doing and try to get to the bottom of this?
You know, I tell you that this is something that Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee has been looking at. And so if, you know, they clearly have the jurisdictional component to be able to look at this. They've been looking at Alvin Bragg personally. They've been looking at the chief prosecutor in this case, who was a former DOJ attorney. And so even though this case is drawing to a close, and that we hope that a jury will reach a verdict very quickly, and that verdict will be that President Trump is not guilty of these trumped-up charges, for lack of better terms. You know, we as Congress, particularly the Judiciary Committee led by Jim Jordan, is going to continue to drill down on this. And hopefully at some point we'll be able to show to the American public the true motivation of these charges. I think everybody knows it. They're just looking for some sort of smoking gun, if you will, to be able to prove these charges were maliciously brought, that this is a case in which clearly if anyone else other than President Trump had committed this, that these charges would not have gone forward. I mean, you just look at the history of this case, Michael. I mean, this relationship with Stormy Daniels was in October of 2006. The payment was in 2016. Here we are in 2024 with the charges finally being brought. There were multiple prosecutors, both state and federal prosecutors, who passed on charging Donald Trump because they did not feel like his conduct met the elements of the crime. And then we had a Soros-funded DA in Alvin Bragg, who clearly has a politically motivated reason for bringing these charges. And then we've seen that these charges now have been brought, and the trial has concluded with the jury deliberation beginning yesterday. So we will continue being judiciary led by Jim Jordan to drill down on the motivation of this and hopefully be able to bring that motivation to the light of the public. And then maybe we'll see whether or not Alvin Bragg should be held responsible for his actions.
Wow. So we hope that it comes to that. I hope they're able to find the things that they need to find to bring this to the public, because we all know exactly what the score is here. And nobody's above the law. I agree with that, except Joe Biden. Congressman Guest, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a great day. Thank y'all again.